great work, Kai. I mean, a nice, more modernistic approach, I would say. I mean, using things like glockenspiel and just the way that in which you have like tuba added. That's not really a period instrument for Beethoven, and then also just in the way that you've scored your horns. It's more of an expectation of the open horn sound that would come with with the valve horn. Watch out about proofreading, right? Shouldn't this be C sharp rather than D? Right? You could sort of hear in that mock-up we just listened to that there's some conflicts. Another problem here, it's da 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 da, right? Not da 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 da. Right, so you've got to just really listen to your mock-up and watch for certain things. Now, I've got a lot more comments on this page, but let's start at the beginning and talk through some of this. Now, like if you're using valve horns, then all of these pitches can sound beautifully clear. The B naturals don't have to be stopped, right? These Fs don't have to be stopped, or this A, right? So, like this can sound just gorgeously clear all the way through. So, I mean, if that's the case, then we don't really need to worry about, any of those issues. So let's not even, not even think about them. About the only thing is I would just sort of wonder whether or not you really needed a glockenspiel here. It's only used for a single note, I think. Is that right? Yeah, that's only a single note in the entire piece is being played by glockenspiel. So you might have gotten just the same exact effect out of, say, like a triangle, right? Would have just merged together with the sound of this C octave. There is a problem that I see in that you've fallen into a little bit of a trap here that is set by the score. If you look at the right hand of the original piano score, of which this clarinet part here is almost a direct transcription, it goes da 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 dum. In the original score, this was an F sharp. Here it's a G. But this note only lasts for like an eighth note, right? But did you notice that Beethoven does not show a second voice rest? So he actually is assuming that this is going to continue going, just like it does in the left-hand part, which you transcribed, right? So I feel that the only huge defect in this, aside from a couple little minor issues, which I'll mention in a minute, the only huge defect here is that you just peter out here with the supporting harmony in your horns and bass clarinet and so on. And then it just leaves this really naked note with a little ding on the end, right? So, I think this could have just been a little fuller all the way through to the fermata, through into the fermata, right? These instruments could have kept playing, kept holding their harmonic support. This G could have gone all the way, could have provided harmonic support under this D and so on, this written G, I should say. It was sounding F, same thing here, so you end on this F fifth above. Right, without it, it just sounds, you just have this foghorn below here fading out. And also, what's this? You have diminuendo to pianissimo, diminuendo, and what about the double bass part? Right? You didn't want them both to be, this is certainly get a raised hand in rehearsal, or the conductor asking you if that's what you really mean, right? It's the kind of thing where if you're going to pull this and, have two different things in parts that are playing identical notes in different octaves or even on the same octave, you really want to have the one, like, you have this, okay, so like this is arco and this is pizzicato, but still, like, there will be like the understanding that like the player may feel like they need to come in pianissimo because the cellos are playing, so they really would have to say piano sempre, right, or something like that. just to really make sure that it didn't fade away. But, I don't really see the need for this to fade away, right? And perhaps you're having this fade away because you want everything to fade away just to leave this one single little note, right? All right. So now, let's talk about like the general way that this all evolves, okay? And does, whether it sets the mood effectively. So I think we could just say yes, right? But the question is whether the scoring is effective. And here you have this sort of strange horn F1, 3, 2, 4. Isn't this a third horn part, right? You have this, this high part. That is a third horn part. That is not a second horn part. You have actually scored these in the correct way, but marked them incorrectly, right? So this is a first and second horn part. This is a third and fourth horn part, exactly the way that they should be scored. And then here, you have this marked as third horn. So I don't know where this 1-3 thing came from, or where you're getting your information on that, but don't do this. Score in this correct way, the way that you correctly did it here. Don't throw in a third horn on the top line unless you have a situation where the third horn and the first horn are playing together for long, long periods, long stretches of time where it really necessitates both parts to be scored together. You do not justify that at all here, and in fact you do a really beautiful job of doing the 1-3-2-4 sort of score order kind of thing, which should be written out 1-2-3-4, right? So you've done everything right for the right order, except for this. This is wrong, right? This numeration is wrong. So don't use it unless seriously, don't go 1 and 3, everybody, on your parts, unless the first horn and the third horn are going to be playing high parts together for a long stretch of time, okay? All right, so that's like when you see that in Bartok or in maybe some other scores, there's the justification for them, right? For those scores. It's like that's what's going on there. Of course, all that is thrown out the window in film scoring where, first and second really they're sitting next together and they're playing the higher parts, and it's like that people don't worry about that kind of integrated kind of a scoring. Okay, so to get back to the actual scoring here, you have this, like, I don't understand why this is going diminuendo here. Da, 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 da. This is exactly where you want it to open out, right? Perhaps you're getting softer here because you want this to be a smooth dovetail into the clarinets. If that's the case, then the place for this diminuendo is after the middle of the bar, In fact, I think you should crescendo into it. Da, da, crescendo, da, da, da. Then you can pull back, da. Right? And then let the clarinet open out from whatever, mezzo piano. Now here, I assure you that you want... there's some strange doubling here where you have very high bassoon parts just kind of, this playing this sort of tenor thing. Couldn't this have just been like maybe like just couldn't that have just been the first clarinet? Because it's like just these two notes that will come and go. You think that it's going to be smooth, but no, what's going to happen is that you'll be thickening up your first and third horn parts just for a brief moment. And then like the dovetailing here may sound clumsy if these horn players aren't absolutely on the money with their dovetailing into the clarinet part, right? So this is almost completely unnecessary, right? And then here you've got like the tuba coming in here on this low F, and then bassoon coming here on this low F, right? So you have this F continuing on while the cellos fade, and then suddenly the bass clarinet is gone, and then you have this soft cello part. So it doesn't quite make sense, right? Maybe you don't need these two parts either. Yeah, it's probably fine the way that it is. And then this da 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 bum, and this is lovely, just the way you bring in the flutes right there in the middle of the bar. Da 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 dum. You could have thrown in retardando here. Da 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 da, and even put a fermata here. Da 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 dum. And then da 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 da. Right, so I mean, there's ways of tweaking this to make it even more effective, more emotional, but like the main problem is it's not so much these little notes added here and there that may actually end up distracting if they're clearly heard. They just thicken things up in a way that becomes more noticeable than the actual support role that you intend for them, right? That's a minor problem. And even this little glockenspiel ding, which could be a glockenspiel, could be triangle, could be whatever, right? It's actually not that audible with the way that you have it scored. Like mezzo piano probably will make it come out a little bit more. Maybe even mezzo piano with a tenuto mark. The problem is what I seized on right at the beginning, and that is that you just drop out, and then you end up with just this little exposed note. I don't feel that really, like, I think the thicker chord leading into the fermata as part of the fermata, as the support for that last note, is the way to support da 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 da. So I'll say yes, you did the intro effectively. Nice. I'm not gonna go on too long on that. So then going to the does the melody start with elegance? I mean, it's really nice. Like, you throw in this, I would say, don't go a duet. Just have a single flute here, okay? Because you get more of the character. It'll get kind of swallowed up into the sound of the violins right in here. But that is a classical touch, so that would be authentic. Right, but it's better to do it with a single flute, because like with the two flutes, if they're heard at all, they'll be breathy, and if they're not heard, then it's just kind of, it isn't adding any more sheen to the part, right? But this is lovely right in here. The bassoons taking this harmonic role, and then the clarinets in here. I just felt it was sort of strange, like, you hear this doo 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 doo. You absolutely do not need a duet clarinets here, right? It's, like you end up getting this sort of this weird phased mechanical sound. Just a single clarinet is going to be fine here. I'm also uncertain as to why the horns, like you've got some things in here where the horns just sort of come in right here on the second beat. I think that they could have eased in just like the bassoons did. Okay? But, very softly. Pianissimo, right? Yeah, but I mean, this is just the soul of grace. A beautiful natural flow in here. Just well done, and then the way that this is divided up for the convenience of bowing, it's just excellent. And like right in here, this could have just been one big slur. Right? It doesn't need to follow the same thing, because it's just going to get swallowed up, as I said before. Go check out my tip that's actually available for anybody to watch. Was it like the case of the disappearing flute or something like that? I think it's like the second or sixth or something tip from 100 More Orchestration Tips. You might already have that book, Kai. I don't know. Anyways, but okay, so this is really lovely, these first two bars, and then changing to natural transition to octaves. Da 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 da. I feel this is really lovely. The way that you have the your oboes and bassoons in octaves, and then you have bass clarinet and clarinets in octaves with the horns coming in, and then this just wonderful arc over the top. This is just, beautifully balanced. I think it's nice. I think the trumpet might be a little too much, but everybody else I think is really nice and clear and clean. This note here might be better balanced as a contrabassoon note, okay, or even as a bass clarinet note, just having them jump down and grab that low F. But I mean, everything else is just very, very nice. Now here you get this. Here, I think this is like one of the best interpretations of the leggermente part, which, by the way, you shouldn't leave out the word leggermente. You should leave that in here, right? You want these players to play in a very nimble style, just like Beethoven was telling the pianist to do. And then this is lovely, this da 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 da, just like it's trading off from the clarinet to the oboe, and yabba-ba-ba-bum with bass clarinet. Very, very cool. Once again, a more modern touch. And then clarinet, da-da-da-da, going back to oboe again, da-da-da-da, and then bassoon, da-da-da-dee-dum. You could mark staccato or not. It doesn't really matter. They'll play in a staccato style. But what's really lovely here is the way that you worked out this kind of bump, bump, pluck, 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 pluck. I think that this works in a way to give the illusion that pizzicato is doubling at speed, and it's definitely something that is manageable. So kudos to you. That's really a great idea. You could have filled in the beginning of each beam group too. You could have gone da da da, right? So you get this da 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 kind of idea. But even just like the way that it is perfectly fine. And I think that this chatter right in here is just very charming and compelling. So contrast with theme, right? Contrast between lines, even adding, jumping from color to color within the line, and adding also a contrast in the support, but adding harmonic support, which is also rhythmic and also to do with articulation. It's just a great, great idea, Kai. Nice work. Okay, so here we get to this next part. All right, so you may have heard the evaluation that I just did for the previous score in this series, and and heard how I talked about the the whole idea of crescendo to, are you are you doing a crescendo to something and then going subito piano, and if you are, then you should mark it, and so on and so forth. Now here, you were very unclear on what you were doing dynamically. All right, in the first place, you don't need two piano markings in a row. In the second, why don't we have a, if we're going to do a marking, shouldn't they all sort of, either we are just kind of operating on what they did before or not. And then here, don't we need some sort of destination dynamic? And if you're just going to go piano subito again, shouldn't you mark it, right? Is this crescendo leading to a stronger bar or here, or stronger measure here than compared to the other parts? Are you saying, well, I want a crescendo here in my bassoons, which by the way, shouldn't you mark a due here if they are going to be playing together? Again, so there's just some incomplete stuff in here that needs to be worked out. Okay, but and also, if you're going to go a due here with your clarinets, doesn't this need to also be a due? Right, so you might be looking at some of these things and going, Thomas, stop it. I see all of these things I should have proofread. But yeah, so it's just really unclear who's playing what and how many of each and so on and so forth. Right? But my comment would be that if you're going to have this much going on in your brass section, you might want to at least crescendo up to mezzo piano, if not mezzo forte, in your winds. I would say mezzo piano, right? And then so that you have a more blended sound with your brass, right? Right. So that would be like the modern approach. But one way or another, if you're going crescendo and you're crescendoing to something and you intend this to be louder, then you just have to really define what's going on here, Kai. I don't understand how loud this is supposed to be. Maybe you meant to go back to piano subito, right? So that needs to be marked. Then just the question of how functional are these parts? If you've got bassoons going, A, G, F right here, and you've got your second trombone doing the same exact thing, is how audible is that going to be? And not to mention the fourth horn, right? Could you just end on this pitch here and then dovetail into those parts and those other instruments and just have them play, right? About the only instrument here that is going to have a part that isn't doubled by the brass section is the oboe here, but this oboe part is also going to get the resonance of the trumpet below is also going to swallow it up, right? So I mean, so there's a lot of stuff going on here. You know, you might need more powerful upper winds. I would say a due. Here's where I would throw in the a due for the oboes, because then you get at least a fighting chance here, right? A due at mezzo forte, and then the oboe part could be heard clearly over. But like, you probably don't want to do that. You probably want something that just is kind of a, you know, is just provides a little bit of an anchor above for the chorale. So in that case, I would just mark it like mezzo piano. And just make it all part of the same crescendo. But like, yeah, you're better off just with these other parts of just stopping, and then, you know, you don't even need this contrabassoon part, really. I mean, you know, you're better off just dropping the tuba an octave here, right? For these two bars. All right, boom, boom, boom. And I mean, that's a little deep, but like, you know, for tuba. But like, if you're working with somebody with a double C, it's no problem. Okay, but I mean, I'm kind of getting away from the evaluation criteria. I think you set things up pretty well, and I like the fact that you're coming in with your trombones here. I would definitely have this function here played with the bass trombone, right? Just so that the filling in is done nice and solid with all the parts, and so it leads more naturally to the sound of the brass chorale. And this is really nice in here. These little touches of timpani, and you know, along with the pizzicato and everything else. So yes, this works for me. You know, that just, you know, with some caveats about, like, it's really unclear what the winds are doing here. But yeah, but you solve a few problems. I don't see any big issues here with balance or anything else. I think it's pretty well worked out, and it has really nice colors in here. You know, like with the first horn working hand in hand with your first trumpet and so on. It's just a beautiful, rich golden color. All right, so that leads to here, and you know, I mean, this might be a really strong reason, just right in here, with the way that everything is scored, for you just to not do this idea here with your oboe at all and just leave it out, right? Because you're also inconclusive about this right in here, like the way that this ends on this downbeat. I feel you should be using all the same instruments that you used before to hit the downbeat of the following bar, right? Because, you know, rather than just using horns and bassoons and clarinets, right, which are kind of, it doesn't have continuity, right? Here you've got the pizzicato down here, and that's fine, and a little bit of timpani, but like, it just really kind of poops out here with all these other instruments. Shouldn't they be involved more so than these other guys right here? And certainly, if you're going to have an oboe solo, maybe you shouldn't have that high oboe part before, right? So, you know, so that is like, that's where just that little throwaway bar, that it's the beginning of the B screen, right? You know, the beginning of part B, completion of phrase, you know, usually that isn't an issue, but here it is because of just the vastly different way that you scored this part right here. You might have just been really compartmentalizing it and not thinking of this downbeat as being a continuation, like a real solid continuation of what happened before. Or maybe you were thinking about it but not giving it quite the same attention, right, or focus. All right, so going on, solo, which just, you know, does not need to be fancy. Tell us which person. Okay, that's what you need there. And you also need a dynamic here. So like maybe mezzo forte, right? If you're going into a forte part with the other instruments and so on. So like mezzo forte at the very least. Da 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 da. Mezzo forte dolce. Bum. So are you sure that you want to slur across the, you know, this, you know, do you really want da ta ta, right? Or do you want ta or ta 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 or ta ta? You know what I mean? It's just is really weird that this is slurring, like you're slurring across what really feels like it really wants to go ta, ta, da, da, da. You know, I mean, think about the tonguing. But, you know, as far as the complementary timbre is concerned, can't beat clarinets. But here, like, I think that this is a bit of a misperception of the role of tenor register bassoons, because like it isn't really necessarily the kind of timbre that blends together with throat tone clarinets so much, right? I mean, they're both kind of a weak, thinner sound, but they have a tendency to like grate against each other a bit, unless the players are absolutely dead on and are used to playing that way, which doesn't really come up very often, right? So, you know, your mock-up is sort of lying to you here. It's not going to be the smoothest kind of a thing to have your first clarinet part and your first bassoon part playing together with the bassoon way up there at the top of their tenor register, right? So, caution on this. I'm not in love with this. But this is really nice too. The way you've got the tremolo, second violins, and then violas coming in here to help out with that harmony, and then sort of as expanding, right? We're thinking ahead to widening the gap and so on. So this is all working really nicely, I would say. I don't know if you really need contrabassoon there, but you know, this would be better off as just second bassoon, I think. Yeah, but you know, otherwise, this is nice. Okay, but like, I think you may have misunderstood a couple of points about my pitfalls video, and that is, you know, these instruments should share the downbeat, right? You don't want your second player to go rest da da rest da da rest da da, right? You want them to go ta 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 ta, right? So just like you've done it perfectly here, right? So just take this approach here, right? So that that your second player is also playing the same C sharp, right? So they're going bum ba ba bum ba ba bum ba ba bum ba bum, right? And then your first player is going da 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 da, right? Then I think you get the best results, right? And then like here you're also missing the downbeat here, right? And then here you're missing the downbeat. But why? I mean, why? Why can't this player play this B, right? So it gets its ta 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 ta, and that's just so much easier to keep track of than going rest da da rest da da rest da da, right? So they work better when they're really going ta 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 as part of the pattern, right? So ta 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 or ta 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 ta. All right. So I guess that didn't quite come through, or perhaps you know there was a miscommunication or something like that. All right. So just like it's a real easy thing to fix. You just turn these sixteenths into like just do this, and then turn that into that, right? So it's just really simple to fix. So if you do that, then this is all functional. I think this is, I mean, yeah, it's all totally playable with the first coming in there, bum, you know, that's nice. And then this is kind of cool. Dun 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 dun. It's nice to have that, just that little extra emphasis there. And just here you have unmeasured tremolo. What if you had measured tremolo on sixteenths? So instead of going and the background is going. See, I think that's what you intend, right? Because like if you really intended this to be, three of these in a row, then wouldn't it have just been easier to go like, right? Right? Wouldn't that have just been easier? So by throwing us all these pitches like this, maybe it suggests to me that you really intended this, right? Da 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 da. One way or another, though, you really should be like if you're going to take the pains to mark this divisi, then obviously this is divisi, this is divisi, and so on. So you would need to go in there and clean that up. right? So now that takes us to emphasis on alternating middle note. Ba, da, 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 da. Here I feel that it isn't strong enough, right? You've got your bass clarinet in here, um, and it's like supporting this cello note and so on. What about like like a stopped horn note, like maybe like your second and your fourth, right? Both playing essentially what's going on here in the cellos. All right. What if you had something like this? All right. Let's get rid of the arco. All right. So what if you, and then not to go hog wild on this, but you could mark this plus sign, open sign, right? And then just do that throughout, right? And then you would, or even if you had just a single horn doing this, notice that I'm giving it to the lower horns, right? The second and the fourth, just like because that is a lot of in their wheelhouse. They'll get stopped pitches lower in their instruments with a lot more facility than the upper players if they're used to doing it a lot. I mean, technically speaking, first and third should be able to do anything that the second does, except for that just like you don't want them hanging out down there doing certain things so much, right? That you don't want your higher players to be hanging around kind of digging away at the gravel, right? When they are going to have to pop out some big, beautiful high notes, cleanly, right? So this is an example where the lower horns really fulfill a function. All right, so this is an example of like how you could reinforce this, and there are a bunch of other ways. You could do it with trombones. You know what I mean? Which don't need, you just have the accent and then the non-accented note, and you'll get a similar effect to. I mean, you won't get that same squished stop sound, but you still get like kind of the little bit of a blare on the accent. But I think it just needs to be stronger here. It's not strong enough. It doesn't really bring out that quality all that strongly. I mean, it's cool the way that you've emphasized it a bit here with the bass clarinet, but still like with the overall balance of the passage, the way that you've scored things, and that leads to one other issue too, and that is just that the dynamic markings here are just very I'm not going to use the A word, arbitrary. That's kind of a fighting word, but like, I mean, forte in your upper winds, piano and mezzo piano in your lower winds, piano in your strings, and tuba and so on. This just needs a little bit of work. All right. So it's just, like there should be more of a homogeneous dynamic. All right. However that, whatever that took to then, just to have the winds, or excuse me, the strings much more present behind the winds. And I mean, there's just a lot of adjusting, or evening out, right? See, adjusting is the wrong word. Adjusting would sort of imply that, oh, well, this needs to be a little louder there, a little softer there, and blah, 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 blah. More, I think evening out would mean more like, like more like what I said, like more of a standard approach to all the dynamics, so that they were all moving together excitedly towards this ending, right? So you might be thinking to yourself, well, I just want this upper part loud, and then I transfer the loudness here to the upper strings, and then everybody pushes underneath them and so on. I mean, and that's a cool idea, and perhaps you weren't quite getting the level of jump, of brightness, without marking them up to forte here in the upper winds. But still, I mean, I just feel that in practice this is going to sort of screech while nobody's going to really hear what the winds are doing. And then when it shifts over to the winds, this will actually be softer, because they don't have that same sort of pointy sound that the winds do here. Like the strings will have a sort of a softer, more homogeneous sound. Even if they sort of put a lot of elbow into it. Shouldn't this be a slur, right? So it, this will seem like it's kind of, the transfer over to this part is not going to be as clean. And then suddenly you have this fortissimo. I think there should be crescendo there too, and so on. So there's just a bit of dynamics that need to be worked out here in the second page. It doesn't mean that anything is bad here. It's just that, yeah. All right, and I see what you're doing here. You're starting 2 and 3 below, and then you're adding the first part. That's all fine. All right. Yeah, you're going all the way up to this high G, sounding C, and you're putting the trills up here on these parts. So you're having this trill on a trill of a fifth in the oboes and flutes and so on. Yeah, I mean, just be aware that when you have instruments like that, they're trilling. It's like there was a piece that had a horn trill recently, one of these entries that had a horn trill, and there I was sort of advising, hey, maybe just have one of those horns trill, because it's such a forceful sound. It's it's going to feel really messy with two horns trilling, more random pitches, and if they match up, it'll sound mechanical. But in this case, that's not a big concern, right? Just in case anybody was sort of following these entries or evaluations as I release them, it's not really a big concern with winds, because they have this wonderful flurrying sound when they're playing a duet like this on a trill. Okay, so and especially in these registers here. Yeah, and this is lovely, just like the way you just go whoosh. So it's very Hollywood. Yeah. And you could have, instead of the D here, you could have just done a trill up on the G instead of the D, right? And that might even have a clearer sound. And then of course you've got this roll here on timpani. So yeah, so I think that like the overall conception of it is pretty good. Just dynamically, it just needs a little bit of work. For instance, why are you pushing your brass here to a forte and your lower strings only to a forte, right? Why not have all of your winds and strings go to fortissimo and your brass go to a forte, right? So that's just a better, that is a, if you're going to do dynamic mixing like that, then that's a more workable kind of a balance, right? Kind of, that's the kind of things that you'll see pencil work in a score. So people sometimes, I don't know if they really take issue with certain things that I say, but they might sort of question well, Thomas, how come you're always telling people mark the dynamics down 1 degree for the brass in a forte passage and so on and so forth. And it's and I actually don't always do that. If there are ways in which the brass are scored so that all of the instruments, the brass and the strings and the winds are all scored in ways that don't get in each other's way and don't knock each other off the pedestal in terms of resonance and so on, then it's fine for them all to have the same marking. But when I suggest a marking like this, forte here and fortissimo in the winds and strings all the way through, that is the result of listening to rehearsals and seeing pencil work done, right? Seeing a conductor say, could you guys just hey brass, could you just cross off those fortissimos and put in fortes instead, and then hearing the result and seeing just how much that cleaned things up, or the reverse, having the conductor say, hey, winds and strings, can you go to a fortissimo there, please, instead of just a forte, and then same thing, right? You just get that, you get a more controlled, more blended sound. All right. So not to belabor the point too much, but those are my thoughts about this, and I feel that a lot of these other things, in terms of spreading the harmony out and not leaving a hole right here, and widening the gap in a natural way, and all these things. I mean, just so long as you are able to sort of rewrite the dynamics here so that they all kind of work together and they're more integrated and they're more naturally expanding, then I think that is all solved. All the evaluation criteria are naturally resolved, except for, once again, you got to go dot, 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 not just da 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 da. Right, that is the tougher. That's just mentally tough. It's better to go ta 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 ta. You know, ta 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 ta. You know, it's like the Lone Ranger music, right? The William Tell overture kind of articulation pattern. So yeah, so that can, the players can just be really precise with that kind of tonguing. All right. Anyway, so I mean that's kind of all I had to say about it, Kai. It's a really cool score, and there's so many great things about it. I love the way that you set this up right in here. I love like just the way the flutes and the oboes work together, hand off to the strings here, and you kind of go for different like variations of color and so on, and variations of roll, and to try to keep the players from pooping out too quickly. Is this supposed to be a duet here? I see here you have two voice writing, and then suddenly you go to single voice. So you need to clear that up, right? So just little things that little aspects of proofreading that need a little bit more work. Like who's playing here? Is this first, second? Who's that? Is it a duet? Right. Anyway, but really fun piece. I'm so glad that you put the work into it, and I really appreciate that. And I've looked at so many cool scores since coming home, and been able to evaluate them in depth and get these videos ready. And I'm just so grateful for that, and for the support that you made it all possible. All of my patrons, and that is really something that means a lot to me, because I know like we're all musicians. And we don't have, a ton of support just for our own projects, right? And here you guys are like making it possible for thousands of orchestration students and composers and so out there to have access to resources. And that is a real awesome thing for you guys to help me provide. And I appreciate it so much. And even, like as much as that, not only providing me the ability to do that and to set aside that time for you, but also, the way that everybody has sort of stepped in and left, continued my work. There are some people there who are commenting on every single video so far, and, in every single entry, and saying such positive, useful things for people. It's not just like patting people's egos. The comments that I'm seeing are, just have great suggestions on how to further improve the efforts, and and also like have some caveats of some things that I might have said, like just kind of some clarifications, and those are welcome. I don't have a big ego about this. If people feel that I got something wrong or maybe was a little unclear about something, that's fine. That's perfectly fair. I would want you guys to step in and clarify for me if I had left something out. So anyways, thanks to you all. So you guys know what to do, right? You probably are already typing your responses to Kai below. And Kai, if you have time to comment on some of these other entries that have come out recently, especially here in this semi-brev category, which just has such beautiful ideas, and just like the conception of sections A and B as like this beautiful introduction, leading to a resolution at the end. It's just such a wonderful kind of microcosm of the piece that's worth focusing in on. And so thanks to you all, and I will see you in the next video, which will be one of our very rare, precious entries that cover the beginning of the second movement.